All right, gentlemen, welcome to Thirsty Thursday, number 57. We're very privileged and honored to have Eriks Gabliks on us with us for tonight with the National Fire Academy. And before we kind of get into going around the horn a little bit, I just want to say thank you very much to everybody. And we just had the National Fallen Firefighters Weekend up in the National Fire Academy, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But a lot of stuff going on around the country, and so with that, Bobby, I'm going to kick it down to you, and then Eric's will go up to you for your introduction, and we'll start talking. So, Bobby.
Hi. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome, Eriks. It's a pleasure having you here and a pleasure meeting you. And I'm really looking forward tonight. My last course in the Fire Academy was a 2-week management course in the 90s. So I need to get back up there again because that was probably one of the best management classes I had ever had, actually. So it was very, very good. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation tonight and see where it all goes. So welcome, Eriks.
Thank you. Good to be with all of you.
Great. And Eric, thanks again for being on. I know you're on the road as you are many, many days out of the year. So if you want to give a little bit of introduction, then we'll get the show started.
Sure. So it's my honor and privilege to be the superintendent of your National Fire Academy. So we're based in Emmitsburg, Maryland. We're part of the United States Fire Administration. And let me talk a little bit about what we do, and then I'll talk about my background. So the U.S. Fire Administration was created just about 50 years ago, believe it or not. A relatively young agency, and that was a result of a report that many of us have read over the years called America Burning. We had a fire problem in our country where we were seeing tens of thousands. I'm sorry, not tens of thousands, but thousands of individuals dying because of fire, civilian fire deaths. And we were seeing, hundreds of firefighter injuries and deaths in the country. And the American Fire Service worked with elected officials, created a report called America Burning, which led to the Fire Prevention and Control Act of 1974. That report said that we as a country needed to do a number of things to address the fire problem in the United States. One of those was reducing firefighter injuries and deaths. Another one was reducing civilian fire deaths. Another one is to have a national organization that, if you will lead or take point on the fire issue in America. And within that report, also, it called for the creation of what we now call the National Fire Academy. So the U.S. Fire Administration and Dr. Lori Moore Merrill is the administrator of. She is the current administrator. A number of different administrators have served in the past under presidential appointments, but that's when the U.S. Fire Administration was created. As we talk about America Burning and coming up to the 50th anniversary, we have done collectively with our state, local, tribal, territorial partners a lot of really good things. We have reduced the number of civilian fire deaths in the country, but unfortunately, we still see approximately 3,000 civilian fire deaths each year. So we still do have a fire problem in our country. A lot of those fire deaths, unfortunately, are socioeconomic. We have people that do not have a working smoke alarm. We have people that do not know what to do in case there's a fire in their home, right? So the education programs aren't reaching all of the communities that we should be reaching in our cities and around the country. So we have work to do there. We also look at firefighter injuries and deaths. And through the partnership with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation and our state and local partners, we have done a very good job of reducing firefighter injuries and deaths. We still have work to do, but we are in a much better place than we were when America Burning was written. Sadly, a number of your listeners know that just last weekend, you mentioned this, we had the Fallen Firefighters Memorial on campus. We had 77 line of duty deaths last year. Some of those are firefighting related, but they were all in the service of helping their communities, their airports, and their natural resources. So that includes people, unfortunately, being struck by vehicles working on a highway incident, perhaps assisting a car fire or a vehicle crash. We have, of course, the cancer risk today. We also have behavioral health issues today. So we are still seeing firefighter deaths, but the number, again, is much lower than it was. And that's because of training. That's because of awareness. That's because of changing the culture. That's because of policies, procedures. So we're in a much better place. But again, we still have much work to do because really we would love to collectively get down to zero, right? No deaths being added to the memorial. So that's the ultimate goal. Personally, I started as a volunteer firefighter in New Jersey. So I started in Adelphia, New Jersey, Howell Township Fire District number 2. I signed up to be a volunteer firefighter. I did that for 9 years. And then I also worked full-time at the county as a 911 operator, overseeing fire rescue dispatch. So I was the person doing that for a number of years. Met a girl in Rutgers University. We started dating, and one thing led to another, and we got engaged. And then she was either going to move from Oregon to New Jersey, or I was going to move from New Jersey to Oregon. So I decided to head west. So I went to Oregon, worked part-time as a 911 operator there for a while. I got a job with the state, setting up the 911 training program, and that led to me joining the Public Safety Academy. So the training program was there. Eventually, there was a vacancy in the fire training program for a supervisor. The director at the time said, "Look, you have fire background. Can you help out for a while?" And I jumped in and really enjoyed that. That allowed me to become the fire training supervisor for the state. Then eventually some other positions, I moved up the ladder within the organization. And then for 10 years, I served as the director of the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. So I did that under 3 different governors, was ready for a change, but not ready to retire. So when the superintendent's position opened up, when Tanya Hoover promoted up to be the deputy U.S. fire administrator, I applied for the superintendent's position. About 6 months later, I got a call saying, would you like the position? I talked to my wife and she said, let's do it. So I've been here for just about 2.5 years now, and it's a great opportunity.
Excellent. Well, I can speak personally and collectively glad you're in that position. I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of the National Fire Academy, because obviously it's home to the National Emergency Training Center and FEMA training, as well as the NFA and the National Fallen Firefighters. And I had the privilege of starting to go to the NFA back in the late 80s. And I do have to say the evolution of the Fire Academy in a very positive way has just been leaps and bounds. And I tell a lot of people this who are new to the academy, especially when I have the opportunity to be there, that I do recall the days that you had to get up at maybe 4:15 in the morning if you wanted any shot at having any hot water whatsoever. You went down the hallway and you showered with 19 of your newest friends and colleagues, and you could always tell the new person at the National Fire Academy, because when a toilet would flush, you'd see 19 people take one step back, and the rookie is like, "What's going on?" And then all of a sudden they got scalded. And then also you had the A bunk and B bunk, and you never knew who you're rooming with. So those days are finally remembered, but at the same time, not only the facilities but the programs have evolved over time. And I always found this very interesting, and I wanted to kind of throw this at you, Eriks. Being a native Marylander, I always found that the National Fire Academy was a hidden gem. It was right in our backyard. And whether it was there or teaching at FDIC, like I mentioned to you pre-show, I could count on one hand the number of people from the Indianapolis area who attended FDIC in some of my classes. And I always felt that odd, because no man's a prophet in his own village. But with the NFA, what are some of your challenges trying to bring people in? Because to your credit, one of the things I see quite often, and I use the same mindset when I deal with my mayor and commission, is anytime you put something out on social media, it's always about your NFA, your National Fire Academy, which it is. It's ours. It's collectively ours as part of our family, part of our network, underneath that national structure. And I say the same thing with the firefighters and paramedics in my community. I said, these are your firefighter paramedics, not mine, it's your. So in your time there, how have you seen things evolve, and where do you see things going, and what would you like to see to draw more people into something that's just such a great resource?
Yeah, and that's a pretty open-ended question. So let me start by making sure that people aren't afraid to come to the campus because of the facilities that you described. So I can tell you that a lot has changed over the last 30 years on campus. So to give your listeners a little bit of background, within American Birding, there was a vision to have a National Fire Academy. The idea was very similar to the West Point of the fire service, right? Or a military war college where we would send our current and future leaders to get professional development opportunities that quite honestly don't exist locally. So, you're not going to come to the National Fire Academy for your firefighter one or your fire officer one, or to learn how to operate a fire truck. But when you hear the term fire academy, that's what people think, right? So when I accepted the position to be the superintendent, I had a number of coworkers, because I had police and fire training as part of my job. A lot of the police officers were thinking, wow, the National Fire Academy, you must have 1,000 fire trucks and 500 ladder trucks, and you probably have a 100-story burn building. And that couldn't be further from the truth, right? We are a professional development organization. As you mentioned, the campus is called the National Emergency Training Center. We are located in Emmitsburg, Maryland, about 15 minutes south of Gettysburg. So we're right on the Mason-Dixon line. So our campus actually originally was St. Joseph's College, and it was a girls' college. It served a very important person. We have a very good relationship with the Daughters of Charity, which is right next door at the St. Elizabeth Seton Shrine. But St. Joseph's College was a college that both nuns were going to, as well as women, because again, all girls school, women that were going to go into serving others. And by that, nursing, social work, all those different kind of things that were important to the sisters to make sure that the community members were being assisted. So about 50 years ago, St. Joseph's College realized that its footprint as a girls-only school probably wasn't sustainable. So they merged with Mount St. Mary's University up the street from us, also known as the Mount, in their athletic arenas. But that relationship was very good there. The Mount still now hosts the St. Joseph's alumni. So just about a month ago, we hosted the reunion we do every year of the graduates of St. Joseph's College. And they are very honest with us when they visit, and they were angry when their school closed, right? Because this is where they went, this is where they graduated, and they were angry that the school was closing, but very happy when they come back on campus to see what the campus is today, which is developing those who help our communities during times of emergency. So at the National Fire Academy side that I get to oversee and lead an amazing group of people, it's developing our current and future fire and EMS leaders. Emergency Management Institute, which is our sister school on campus, is developing our emergency managers. So again, people helping others during times of need. So they're very excited about the mission, but they're also excited about how we maintain the campus because we have a historic campus. And you mentioned, what the dorms used to be like. I'm pleased to share with you that there are no longer, communal bathrooms. So all the dorms have been upgraded to current standards over the last 30 years. They're individual dorm rooms. So one person sleeps per room. You control your own heating and cooling, and you have your own bath and shower. So we've done a lot of upgrades there. But the same is true of the whole campus. We have some buildings on campus, and I'll use the chapel, which is the National Fallen Firefighters Chapel. That chapel is over 150 years old. That chapel was on campus during the Civil War. And for those history buffs listening, the Army of the Potomac actually stayed on the campus during the Civil War. So after the Civil War, the Daughters of Charity treated the injured from both the North and the South that were injured. So we are in the crossroads. The same is true with the barn on campus. That was there during the Civil War. So we still maintain the campus in its historic nature as far as the architecture, the design, but also we have all the modern features. So we do have heating and cooling. We recently updated the fire and life safety systems because we think we should lead by example. And the academic facilities are all updated. So we're, proud of the history, but also committed to the future. And that kind of transitions over to what the National Fire Academy does. So I mentioned you won't get firefighter one or fire officer one, but we offer classes that are not available in most other places. And that ranges from hazardous materials leadership classes, EMS, fire inspection plans review, youth fire setter intervention and community risk reduction, two very popular classes here, especially as this week we're talking about, this is Arson Awareness and Prevention Week. So we do a lot of things there with youth fire setters. We also have fire investigations program on our campus in partnership with the ATF, one of the most well-recognized programs we offer because that one brings in both law enforcement and fire investigators are going to be doing fire investigations, and that's a hands-on program. We also have incident management, which we offer in our simulation lab. So that currently is bringing in different screens where people get to watch incidents unfold and they get to make decisions. But we're going to hopefully do some upgrades there over the next few months and put virtual reality into that facility so that the incident commander can have VR and then they could kind of look around and see what they're doing like they would on a scene. We also offer leadership and management classes, and some of those are executive fire officer, which can be completed in 2 years, and managing officer, and we could talk more about that if you like. And then the other area we're leaning into now more than ever are classes in the wild and urban interface, with our focus on that the interface, right? Those structural fire and EMS providers that may have 1 foot on the patio and 1 foot in the wildland, because people are building out into the interface areas, and when there's wildfires there and they turn toward a community, we're having structural firefighters go out, and in some cases, they may be going across state and even across state lines to help their neighboring fire departments when we run out of resources. So all of those are kind of a sampling of the classes, and again, we offer classes that are not locally available, so we don't replicate what's there. We also are realistic that not everybody can come to Emmitsburg. So we know time and travel are tough, whether it's a career or a volunteer fire and EMS provider. So we offer classes on campus. We also offer classes virtually. And we also bring 2-day classes and 6-day classes through our state fire training partnership. So every state in the country gets 9 2-day classes that the state hosts for us. So they pick the site, they pick the date, and we bring it out. There's no charge to go to that. And we also bring out 6-day classes to each region. So we try to get the NFA as close as we can to every state, because again, we know travel is time and money. And those are 2 things that a lot of cases we struggle to find. On your comment about, folks from Maryland and other states not really taking advantage, that's true. And what I like to say, there's a lot of folks in the fire service that don't know that we have a National Fire Academy. There's also a lot of folks that don't know we have a U.S. Fire Administration. So some of that is us getting the word out. And as you mentioned, I'm very active on social media, but I write for the brand, right? The National Fire Academy is a brand that is very important to me. I benefited from NFA programs. We know approximately 90 to 100,000 students each year take advantage of National Fire Academy professional development opportunities. So we're getting out there. But during the pandemic, what was interesting is because we really shut down on-campus training because people weren't flying and all the quarantines that went with that, we were still doing classes on a state-by-state basis based on COVID regulations, but we really jumped into something that we hadn't done very much of, and we moved into Zoom. So we moved into Zoom with about 10 2-day classes that we thought were the right fit for the Zoom format. And what Zoom did is opened up the doors of the NFA to career and volunteer fire and EMS providers from rural communities that never had a chance to come to an NFA class. And I could pick any state in the country, but wherever that state picks the location to do our 2-day class, somebody will say it's too far for me to go, or I'd have to get a hotel overnight. And we realize that. So Zoom really took that travel discussion off the table. So all you had to do was log in from your home or your fire station. Now, again, the caveat is we still know that there's parts of the country that don't have reliable internet, right? But at least if they had internet, we could bring that Zoom class right into their fire station, into their home. And we had thousands of people take advantage of that. And what we saw in the comments was, this is my first NFA class. I can't wait to take another one. And I hope one day to come to Emmitsburg and take a class on campus. So that's, I think, some of the things that we're trying to do to stay current and relevant. We want to be careful that the 2-day classes, I kind of call that the display case of the National Fire Academy. And by that, if you think of a store, you go in and that front display case is usually what brings people in, and then they go further on in the store. Those 2-day classes we offer both on and off campus, they're the front window or the display case. And when people enjoy that class, they'll take more of them, and eventually they'll want to come to Emmitsburg. What's special about Emmitsburg, and this is not a knock on our campus, off-campus deliveries, but in Emmitsburg, what we have that most other places don't is the ability to bring participants from every corner of the United States and even internationally onto the campus to have the same class. And we don't do death by PowerPoint. We do facilitated learning. But think about, you as an assistant chief or a fire chief or a new captain, and you come to a 2-week class and you're sitting in that room with 23 of your peers from the United States and perhaps one international student having discussions about fire service leadership in 2023 in your community versus another community and perhaps across the pond. So why that's important is that if we bring that class to the local state, which we do, some of those discussions cannot be as frank as they probably should be for that learning environment. Because if the three of us, for example, if Bobby, Trevor, you and I are in that same class and we work in the same region, what's to say that I'm not texting somebody saying, you won't believe what your chief just said about your department, right? So we want to have kind of a safe space for those discussions to happen, because that's how we learn. And that's how we make better decisions in leadership. The same thing with incident management, right? We have a system where we bring in people from every region. So we just had folks on campus, and one of the things that we did before the memorial last weekend, and some of your listeners may have seen the postings from National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, but the Congress gives each family member that is being honored on the memorial an American flag that flew over the Capitol. So the Congressional Fire Service Caucus through Bill Webb and the Congressional Fire Service Institute transfer those flags from the Capitol to the Firefighters Foundation. So they are picked up at DC Fire through a very formal ceremony. And then they arrived on campus in Emmitsburg to be stored in the chapel until the memorial happens. So we are very honored to have the memorial. We say that we honor our commitment on a daily basis to never forget. But what we did as part of that ceremony is we paused at the memorial and had all the students lined up along the walkway to welcome the flags and to truly honor the flags and what they represent. But we paused at the Fallen Firefighters Memorial and we held a traditional 555 bell ceremony. And the person ringing that bell was a fire officer from Guam who was here in the incident management class. So not only did that happen, but also that same individual then was able to go back to Guam and tell his fellow firefighters not only what the campus is about, but how we honor our fallen on a daily basis. So those are some of the what I call game changers that we have that can't be replicated really on a state-by-state basis because of the national and international audience that we bring together. I think as we look at where we're at today in the fire service, and this is a good thing from a profession, but a challenge for us because we have access now to more training classes than ever before. Professional development could be virtual. We can go to a local fire academy. We can go to a state conference. So we have more opportunities than ever in the past. So we are not competing with that, but we are yet another resource. The one thing that we don't do that a lot of people are interested in now is we are now at a place where a lot of people are seeking certification, because that certification may lead to promotion or pay raises or incentives. And we're not a certifying organization. And again, we're not doing what local fire academies do. So a lot of times folks will say, well, I don't know why I would come to this 1 week or 2 week class at the National Fire Academy because I'm not going to get a certification out of it. And I say, you're absolutely right. I said, you're not going to get a certificate that says that you are something 1 or a 2 or 3, but you will have an amazing professional development opportunity. And by the way, there's a lot of other classes out there that are just as important that don't lead to certification. And some of them that I mentioned, we have across the country now classes more than ever on behavioral health, peer support, cancer awareness and prevention, right? All the different things that are not related to tactics and strategy and fighting fire, but all the things that we should know about how we take care of the men and women that do. So that's the counter I make when you don't get certified. You're right. You're not going to get a certificate for this that you can take in your chief's office and say, I should get a pay raise. That's not what it's about. But you will get an amazing professional development opportunity that will last you a lifetime and get you ready for that next promotion when it comes up. The other thing that we do, which is a benefit and added value. So for managing officer, executive fire officer, we have a partnership with the Center for Public Safety Excellence. So they do provide credentials so you can take our certificate of completion and use it to get certification from them. We have similar recognition with the International Association of Arson Investigators. So completing our fire investigation essentials, you can use to receive your certified fire investigator from IAAI. So that's added value with those partner organizations. We also have all of our classes recognized for continuing education through IACET, which is a continuing education organization. And then even more added value is we work with the American Council of Education, or ACE, and all of our resident classes are recognized by ACE for college credit equivalency. So if you take a 5-day, 6-day, 10-day class at the National Fire Academy, not only are you getting the class from us, but then because of our recognition with ACE, you can sit down with your college counselor and say, this is a class I had. ACE recommends this at 3 division or 3 hours at the bachelor's program or associate's program. Can I use this toward my associates and bachelor's? So the added value is, and not every college accepts it, so I'm always transparent about that, but many do. Now you are not only benefiting from the class that you got with your peers, but you now also can use that class toward recognition at a college, so you don't have to take another credit class for 3 credits and pay the money. So that's pretty exciting. One of the big things that we're very excited about with Executive Fire Officer, with our relationship with ACE, is the updated Executive Fire Officer Program, or EFO. That new curriculum, the first 3 classes we submitted for review, are being recognized at the master's degree level. So they're recognized as graduate. So that, again, is added value because it shows the academic rigor. But then again, for somebody working on their master's degree, what a great opportunity for them to have that discussion with their college counselor to say, look at what I've done. Will you recognize that with me seeking my master's? So pretty exciting times.
No, it truly is. And I think it's very unique that since the inception of that campus, way back that you had mentioned, historically, it's been all about service and you're trying to improve and trying to do something better. And I've not been on campus one time over the many years. And I kind of fondly look back at the early days and look to where we are now, where the facilities and everything, we still maintaining the historical reverence to the structures and everything else. But I mean, it's the people on campus, not only the instructors, but I mean the folks that are facilitating the day-to-day operations, whether it's the lodging, the housekeeping, the food service, everything has just gone by leaps and bounds. And I've not been on campus one time that there's not been some change or improvement. And I've always found that very refreshing that the administration of the Fire Academy has always listened to the recipients of the training, because like you said, people come there for classes and some things they cannot get normally elsewhere. And to this day, I was fortunate to be able to go through the EFO program and graduate from the Legacy program. But I still, to this day, my colleagues from all those classes, all those years, we share our issues and problems in the U.S. Fire Service with each other, because there's a lot of wisdom in the trenches. And just last week, I had communication with one of my classmates from year 2 that says, hey, how you doing? I hope everything's well. I've got an issue and a problem. And so we're talking coast to coast. And if it weren't for that ability to network and have those professional development opportunities through the NFA and EMI and the NETC, we would never have had that connection. And whether that connection was through what we did for the interactive learning in the classroom, or sitting there commiserating at the command post maybe later on and trying to figure out these things. But I've always seen, time and time again, there's always something new, always an improvement. And again, I think that the feedback from the students and the faculty and the staff is taken very seriously. And that's something that as fire service leaders, we need to emulate, because a lot of times, and I put something out on social media recently that shows an organizational chart that it's not very flattering. Sometimes we talk about goals and visions and where we're going to go, but unless we take the wisdom from the trenches and actually make systemic changes, we're kind of kidding ourselves. And one of the things I found the most interesting, and you had mentioned it during the EFO symposium, it was news since the last time I was there. I saw at the 9/11 memorial there was this humongous bell, and I said, that's new. And of course, I was very, very curious. And before I even had the opportunity to ask the question, you had actually mentioned that during part of the pre-course, if you will, to the presenters. So if you wouldn't mind, Eriks, could you talk to us a little bit about the 9/11 memorial and the story behind the bell? Because I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. So the campus, and thank you for your kind comments. We're very fortunate to have an amazing workforce that takes care of us from an academic standpoint, from a support standpoint. And a lot of the times those are the people, if you will, behind the curtain. So it's the people that take care of the grounds, people that take care of the facilities, right? The inside part, the working part, the behind the scenes. But we are entrusted with a very special campus, and that campus belongs to the American taxpayers, right? That's a campus that was purchased with federal dollars. It's entrusted to the U.S. Fire Administration, and we are stewards of a very special place. We are also entrusted with taking care of, as we mentioned, the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation has the memorial on campus. So we want to make sure the grounds look perfect every time a family member comes to pay their respects to their loved one that is honored on that wall, or someone that they work with. One of the new things that we're seeing now on campus on the memorial is something that comes from the military, which involves coins. So, a person will leave a coin if they work with the individual, they'll leave a dime if they knew the person, and they'll leave a nickel if they're in the same agency, right? So again, they'll leave that coin on that memorial to make that connection. And there's not a day of the week that goes by that we don't have a guest on campus just to stop by and see the Fallen Firefighter Memorial. And again, thousands of people have died in the line of duty, and each and every day we honor and remember their sacrifice. So our grounds folks work really hard to be stewards of the campus. We also have another memorial on campus called To Lift a Nation. A lot of your listeners may remember after the tragedy at the World Trade Center just about 20 years ago, there was photo taken of 3 New York City Fire Department firefighters that had found an American flag in the rubble and lifted it up, very similar to Iwo Jima, right? So a photographer snapped a picture of that, and that became that picture seen around the world of, this is how America remembers, this is how America honors. But we have a larger than life statue. And by that, I mean the statue is roughly, 3 floors in height. That replicates that picture on our campus. So again, we never forget 9/11 and the impact of that. In front of that memorial are paver stones of each member of the FDNY that died in the line of duty that day. And then there's also a piece of the bedrock from the World Trade Center there. So again, another reminder of the sacrifices made by the American Fire Service, taking care of our own and helping our communities. And then just to the right of that now, Trevor, and that's the bell that was received by the foundation, but something that arrived on campus last year. The bell had actually been around for a couple of years. Historically, the bell was cast just outside Baltimore by a company that has a foundry, and that's called McShane Bells. They had cast bells for churches and colleges for many, many years. They're still in business. I think they're outside of Glen Burnie now. But that was something as a project created by Friar David Schlatter, and he called it the Bells of Remembrance. And Friar Schlatter wanted to honor the FDNY chaplain, Michael Judge, who died on 9/11. So we know about the firefighters that died, but what Friar Schlatter wanted to make sure is that we also remember that there was a chaplain that gave their all that day at the World Trade Center. So he worked with a number of different individuals and had 3 bells mounted on a trailer that would go around the country to 9/11 remembrance ceremonies. And really the commitment there was never forget. So at the end of 20 years, Brother Schlatter said, you know what, it's served its purpose. It's time to find a home. So the largest of the 3 bells is now on campus, donated to the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. And that bell is rung during the Fallen Firefighters Memorial Ceremony on campus. And that also is rung as we do bells across America, where churches and fire stations ring their bells as part of the ceremony to tie in communities across the country with the national event. The other 2 bells, one went out to Shanksville, Pennsylvania to commemorate Flight 93. And then the third bell went to a church in Connecticut where it's honoring the Sandy Hook victims of the tragic shooting there. So the bells were used for 9/11 to remember. But we're very honored to have one of those bells on our campus, and even more special that it was really cast down the road in Baltimore, Maryland, recycled, if you will, from a church that was going to be demolished. The company said, look, McShane loves to kind of repurpose those bells, and we're honored to have it on campus every day now.
Yeah, and I thought that was phenomenal because, again, that was something new and different, and each and every time you go there is something new and different. But just the reverence that the National Fallen Firefighters and the NFA and that entire campus shows, not only to the historical perspective of the college and what the campus became since the late 70s up until today, is just phenomenal. And that's what I think is very special about that place. Many things are special, but you don't get an idea of that. You can certainly read it on the website and the About Us section, if you will. But until you have the opportunity to be on that campus and experience that, or to see the coins on the memorial, and Bobby and I, we served together for many years in the same department in Maryland, and Bobby's still there. So, bless you, my son. But with that being said, in the history of our collective department previously, there's 3 names on the memorial in Emmitsburg from our previous department. And that's very, very important. And I think that the local departments really need to take the initiative, not only to celebrate their own history and acknowledge their own history, but we would do that at our own fire academy, where we would literally have the footprints, or the boot prints, if you will, stenciled of the 3 firefighters who gave their lives in the line of duty in Ocean City. And we would make our recruits know exactly who they were. And if they ever go to the National Fire Academy and to the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial, go around that circle and see some of those things. And it's very humbling for those people who've never been there, and especially if you see the pictures. I've not had the opportunity or taken the opportunity yet to come up for a Memorial Weekend, but when you see that many people in front of those structures that you've walked past many times, and those people now are seeing or experiencing being on campus to really fully understand and the gravity of what goes on there. So to me, that entire campus is just a very, very phenomenal place, not only for the learning, the networking, the professional development, but just to adhere to the roots of the fire service. And Bobby, I know you've had your experience, because Bobby also volunteers in the state of Delaware, and they've certainly had their fallen as well who are memorialized there. And most recently, I think the folks from Wilmington, wasn't it, Bobby, that were up there? So, with that being said,
yeah,
Bobby, what are some of your thoughts
on townhome fire? Yep.
And Bobby, what are some of your thoughts? Because Delaware being a small state, but still very close by, and Eriks, to your point, sometimes travel's difficult, budgets are difficult, but these programs are offered, most of which are free of charge. I mean, again, other than a nominal meal ticket, but these are some things that the experience that you get by going there, and the quality of the programs and the recency of the programs, which I felt was very interesting as well. Because I want to jump back down to Bobby with my question, but one of the things I found very interesting is that even with the instructional staff, there has to be a relevance. And you could have served, you could have been a 50-year guy who's not done anything in 49 years. You're not going to be relevant to the conversation that's taking place there. Yes, there's a certain amount of respect, but you want to make sure that the people who are giving this information to the current and future leaders of the fire service are relevant in their industry. And I just think that there's a lot to be said about that. But Bobby, for you all in Delaware, I mean, what's the access to the National Fire Academy for you guys, or what's the prevalence? Is it really pushed, or is it something that is just kind of like we talked about before? It's in our backyard and we just don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think certainly. I think that the Delaware weekend, just like the Maryland weekend, is very well attended in Delaware, and I do think I know Eric says they don't have certification, but I know that in a lot of parts of the country, for chief officer level stuff, the EFO is a really, really big deal. So I don't know if you call it certification or not, but it certainly means something
Yeah.
to a lot of departments out there. I mean, I attended, I started the fire service in the 80s, and the difference in the fire service in the 80s was there was no internet. You pretty much relied on your local training agencies. You know, where we had Delaware State Fire School here, Mifree in Maryland, and we relied on those, and the networking just wasn't really able to be done as well back then. So now what happens is we have so much networking and so many videos and so many things out there. But you know, if I could say a plea to administrators and fire chiefs and things across the country, we've kind of gutted that type of training, the fire academy, the GEMS, the FDTN, FDIC, because of budgetary constraints. I would argue it's more budgetary priorities. And I think that, you know, the fire departments, you know, it's such good classes available. Like for us in Maryland, it's a short drive to get to Emmitsburg. It's really not that big, you know, a big of a deal for us. I mean, I went to, when I was in my management class, we had people from Alaska and Hawaii and all over the place. And I'm thinking, we really didn't have to take one for the team. Our commute was pretty easy. And now it's like a costing thing. You know, we're even having discussions at work about whether or not we can afford to have a traditional fire academy anymore, and those types of things. And so what I say is, you know, the NFA is there for leadership classes, for management classes, also for hazmat, executive fire officer classes. And I think that the fire departments, the chiefs have got to be able to go in and sell and explain to their legislative group that it's very important to have these people go outside of their local training agencies to get this stuff, because that's where you get the newest information, I guess you could say. So, and I will say that I took, it was called Management for EMS. I don't know if it's still called that now or not, but back in the 90s. And it was a very, very difficult course. We were pretty much up till 10, 11 o'clock at night doing our homework and getting our things done and things like that. But I will tell you, it was one of the best. It was probably the best management classes I ever had. It was that good. So it's available. The Fire Academy defers a lot of the costs that happen to the fire departments for you to go out there already. So you can't get a better deal than to go out there, you know. And so I just think we got to push through the fire service. You know, we've been going through these cuts and stuff and things like that. And the fire department seems to be an easy target for that. And I think we need to start pushing that we're more important than that. You know, 350,000 working fires a year. We consistently kill about 3,000 civilians, and about every 10 years we kill almost 1,000 firefighters doing this thing. And in the America Burning article, it's interesting you said that. It's about when I first got into fire service, that was like the big topic of conversation. But you know what? We really have plateaued. We had a significant drop from that period of time. But now in the last, I'd say a couple decades, we've really kind of plateaued. We haven't seen any great decreases in those numbers, to be honest with you. It's always 25 to 3,000 civilians every year, 75, 80 to 100 firefighters every year. And, you know, some of it's just silly driving, not wearing seatbelts. There's all the stuff that we see, people not being in shape, you know, those types of things. But certainly, the fire departments have got to send people out into the world, because this networking is very important. And sadly, with the age of information, you can get a lot of bad information too. So one of the things is, I think you really need to think about going to credible places that have established a history, like the National Fire Academy, like FDTN, that vet their instructors and do all those types of things, because you can find anyone to teach anything nowadays anywhere, online or wherever. So I appreciate everything that the National Fire Academy does, and I really want to go back out there. I just haven't had a chance in a while, but I'd really love to go back out there. And Trevor, you're right. That campus is something. It's amazing. The old swim pool and the things back there. I went back far enough. It was they had like group bunk rooms, and I think they were just then changing to individual rooms at that time. Matter of fact, they were already doing the construction for all that kind of stuff, and it's just a very, very historical kind of place, and it feels special when you go up there. And I think it's a really good place to have the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial because of that. It's a very historic place, and I think they do a great job to honor those. And I didn't know at the Bell. I'm glad you brought that up, Trevor. I hadn't even heard that story, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and Bobby, you mentioned a lot of good things, and Trevor did as well. So let me kind of try to catch some of the things that you mentioned that I haven't even touched on. One, as you mentioned, state weekend. So for states near Emmitsburg, Maryland, so we host Delaware weekend, Maryland weekend, Virginia weekend. So the Mid-Atlantic states all come in. And what we do, instead of taking classes to their states, we'll bring those classes on the campus and host a state weekend. So we might host 5, 6, 7 two-day classes. So that way, let's say a group of firefighters from Delaware, 4 of them can jump in a staff vehicle, come to Emmitsburg. We provide free lodging. They could each take a different class, take that information back and share them with their agency. And their only expense is their time and buying meals on campus, right? If they would come, if we're going to get somebody coming to a resident class, again, the classes are free. Only cost we have is for meals. We provide the lodging. And if you come to a resident class, a 1 week or 2 week, we even reimburse your travel. So that could be mileage, that could be airfare. So that firefighter I mentioned, that officer from Guam, who was on a plane for 12 hours to get to Emmitsburg, we picked up the airline ticket for them. We provide a lodging with them, and they got to meet with their peers from across the country. And Trevor, to tie into what you said, which is super important, when I visit classes, I say 3 things will happen while you're here if you allow it to happen. One is that we will treat you well, i.e. the National Fire Academy will treat you well because it's a student-centric organization. The second one is you will learn something new. And then the third one is you will build a network of peers from around the country. And by that, you have a roster. You may set up a Facebook group. You may exchange everybody's emails, but you will now have potentially 20, if not 25 peers from different parts of the country that you can shoot an email out to, post a social media post and say, I'm working on this. I've got this going on. Has anybody had this issue? And probably within 24, 48 hours, you'll get responses from all, if not, or at least half, if not all of those folks in the class saying, we've had that same issue. Here's a policy procedure. We're working on that as well, right? So that network is super, super important. And that network doesn't end at the end of your class. That network in a lot of cases stays forever, right? I still stay in touch with people that I went to campus on, and that was 10 years ago, where somebody called me the other day and said, do you have anything on this? And I said, let me take a look and we'll get it to you. So that's a really important part. The other thing is, in addition to the memorials, we do honor our fallen every day, but we also honor them in another way. And that is by making sure that our classes are current and relevant, and making sure the people coming are getting the most current information about how we could mitigate firefighter injuries and deaths. So we want to make sure that we're learning. For example, Bobby, you mentioned, the changes in fire. But we also have to realize that the building construction is different than it was 10, 20 years ago. So, we want to make sure that our fire inspector classes, our building codes classes are current, and making sure our inspectors know, what they're looking at when they see this new construction. But equally important, incident commanders know, what they're looking at when they show up on that new structure that is involved in fire. So we honor our fallen also by making sure that we're learning the lessons from each of those line of duty deaths and incorporating them into the right classes so that we're learning how to mitigate those in the future.
No, absolutely. And that's what I always found, again, fascinating, is that there's always a sense of recency. As much as there's an adherence and a reverence for tradition and where we've been, there's always a look to the future. And, even people, I've been reading the book. I picked up my Dr. Clark's book when I was up there last month, and going through that. So, the contributions that people still want to make to not only the campus, but the fire service community. And it's not just the U.S. fire service community. I mean, I've had the privilege of being in classes with international students. So that networking, it spreads and spreads. So with that being said, there's so many great things going on currently at the campus, previous at the campus. I mean, just the whole history is, to me, very endearing. But Eriks, what's your vision? I mean, because you're in the driver's seat right now. So what's your vision for the short term and long term of the academy? During your tenure.
Yeah, no, and thank you, and let me take a little rabbit trail because you mentioned something, and I wanted to share this because you mentioned the international connections, and before the memorial last weekend, we were honored to have on campus 3 fire officers from Ukraine. They were here. In the United States, they attended FDIC, but they were here, if you will, for some rest and relaxation away from the war that's occurring in Ukraine. A chief of a station and also 2 of their officers from adjoining stations. But they wanted to visit the National Fire Academy, and we had a chance to visit with them and talk about what they're going through in a war zone. But they also wanted to thank the American Fire Service for the donations being made of personal protective equipment, firefighting equipment, because of the damage that it's being put through in the war zone. So they were here to say thank you, but we were also here to kind of listen to what they're going through and to support them. But and this ties into two names that you'll know. But Lou Rader, who is obviously well known in the Frederick County area, as well as Scott McCord, who retired from Rockdale. They're both very active with the Fallen Firefighters Memorial, but they were on campus when that group from Ukraine came to visit. And I asked both of them, because of their connection to the foundation, if they would explain and walk those Ukrainian firefighters through the Fallen Firefighter Memorial and explain the significance. And they were impressed with how America honors our fallen. And that we never forget. So both of Lou and Scott, I just wanted to give a shout out to them, because I know that a lot of your listeners know those folks, and they're well respected within the fire service and in the region. But the other thing, the vision for us going forward is to stay current and relevant. We want to make sure we don't rest on our laurels. So we want to make sure that we have fresh 2-day classes out there, because we want to keep that display case current. We want to make sure that the residential classes are current and relevant, because we don't want to have somebody come and say, you know what, this is pretty old and dated. I don't think it was really worth my time. And, Bobby, you mentioned the EMS management class. We update that on an ongoing basis to make sure that we're covering the information that people want to know. We also are embracing the changes. So we have a new class in development right now for a 2-day delivery that's going to be called Diversity, Equity, Inclusion in Fire and EMS. We have organizations across the country that are trying to figure out how do they recruit and retain and allow people to belong to fire companies, fire departments that are not represented. So that could include more women in the fire service, more people of color, but DEI is a big part, and we're developing a class for that. Another one in development is EMS supervision. Bobby mentioned the 2-week management class, but we are now going to launch in June a 2-day class in the 2-day delivery format, which is mostly for volunteers, because that's a weekend delivery. But getting EMS supervision principles out to career volunteer folks that don't really have time to come to a week-long resident class, because quite honestly, the call volume we're seeing in EMS, right? It's tough for those people to get away for a week or two. So that's a new class rolling out. We also are going to launch a new class called Fire as a Weapon, also a 2-day class, because what we're seeing now in America is we're seeing fire used as a weapon, either by violent extremists. We're seeing it used during protests. We're seeing government buildings, houses of worship lit on fire, medical facilities. So making sure that those first responders and those officers understand what they're running into and how to be safe, and how to make sure that at the back end that we could prosecute those people that start those fires. Another part of the fire as a weapon is sadly what we're seeing, where people are distressed and they're starting fires, and then they're drawing in first responders and shooting at them, right? We've had that happen in some places. So having courses like that are timely and that give people that information, those nuggets of information, if you will, to go back and do something in their agency, whether it's policy, procedure, change in culture, things like that. We're going to move more into virtual, so do more online classes. We just finished up the executive fire officer redesign. So Trevor, I know you went through the legacy program. Some people believe the legacy program was harder than the new one. I will let your listeners know it's actually not. There's a lot more writing in the new executive fire officer program. So again, The one that you and I went through was great. The new one, we grabbed all of the good things from the old EFO and kept them into the new one, but we need to make sure it was refreshed, right? The new EFO program focuses on 3 pillars, and that's self, you, the student, you, the leader, understanding who you are and how you think and how you act. The second pillar is your organization. You as a leader in your fire rescue agency need to know your organization, your people, and how they react and how they think. And then the third one is community. How do you, your organization, plug into the community that you serve? So those are the pillars of the redesigned EFO, and we're pretty excited about that. So we're going to keep new courses coming in, but we also want to kind of keep those good traditions, if you will, of honoring our fall and making sure we know the history of the fire service. A lot of leadership lessons, for example, for executive fire officer, we go up to Gettysburg Military Park and we have, we call it a staff ride, right? So we have a certified tour guide come in and we learn the leadership lessons from the battle at Gettysburg, right? From the North and the South. People made good decisions, people made bad decisions there, but there are so many lessons to learn there about the history of leadership. So we want to make sure that we're taking advantage, and again, having facilitated learning in a safe environment and moving away from death by PowerPoint. So a lot of good things are happening. The other thing I'll just mention, so what else are we doing at the end of June? For the first time ever, we're hosting Women's Weekend at the National Fire Academy. So if your listeners just Google National Fire Academy weekends, they can sign up. We're offering 7 different 2-day classes. We're doing that in partnership with Women in Fire, but it's open to anybody that wants to come. So that's something that we're doing to kind of let what I call the underrepresented groups know that we are the National Fire Academy for everyone in the American Fire Service. So Black, white, Hispanic, Native American, Asian, we are the National Fire Academy. We're your National Fire Academy. Everybody is welcome. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that. The other thing that we're doing, leaning out more to social media than ever, because that's how we're communicating. So letting people know what's happening, and just a lot of exciting stuff. The administrator in October hosted the U.S. Fire Administrator Summit on fire prevention and control. She brought in our nation's fire service leaders as well as our research partners. And she asked, what are the most important issues affecting the American Fire Service today? For your listeners, they can Google U.S. Fire Administrator Summit. National Fallen Firefighters Foundation has been kind enough to post all that on our YouTube page. So you could watch the summit as it was recorded. You can get all the documents. But 6 things, 5 of which are specific to U.S. Fire Administration. The first one is cancer. How can we lean in more on cancer than we are now? And it's great that we're catching cancer more than ever, but what can we do on the front end? What can we do with more physicals? What can we do with more advancements, right? So we're having discussions about PFAS with the firefighting foam and the PFAS within our turnout gear. So how can we make the firefighting occupation, career volunteer, safer and be more aware of cancer, and how can we lean in on that with early detection and medicals and all those things. The second one, behavioral health. Sadly, we are seeing more firefighters take their own lives that are dying in the line of duty. That is an issue that has happened for a number of years. So getting to a place that not only do we have culturally competent resources available for both career volunteer fire and EMS providers, but also getting to a place where we can say we're not okay. So, if I was working with Bobby or with you, Trevor, you see me on a daily basis, when I'm not the same as I was the day before. So having that discussion to say, hey, Eriks, you don't seem to be your normal self. What's going on? Right. And it may have nothing to do with the fire station. It may have something to do with an incident, but maybe not. It could be something at home. But having that ability to say, you don't seem yourself. Are you okay? And if I'm not okay, having that discussion and plugging me within resources, right? The third one, and we mentioned this a little bit, codes and standards. What we're seeing across the country, you could look at wildland urban interface areas where we want defensible space and building materials that are, fire resistant. But what we're seeing now in a lot of communities is we're talking about affordable housing. We're seeing a lot of communities having discussions about maybe we should roll back these fire codes because builders are saying if we take this out or take that out, we could make this housing more affordable. And I think we have to be very careful that affordable housing doesn't mean unsafe housing from a fire protection standpoint. The fourth one won't be a surprise to any of you, recruitment or retention. The volunteer fire service has struggled in a lot of communities to find volunteers for whether it's rescue squads, ambulance squads, or fire companies. But we're now seeing career departments struggle to find people to hire, right? So, how do we give our partners more tools to do recruitment or retention? We used to wait until people are out of high school or college. It's too late. Kids are making up their mind earlier than ever. So, how do we get into high school programs or junior high school programs through STEM or through Explore cadet programs and getting kids interested in fire and EMS careers? And there's a lot of successful programs out there, but equally important, there's a lot of people that just say, I just don't know where to start. What do I do? So that's the fourth one. The fifth one is climate change, the impacts that climate change is having on our fire and EMS response community. So, we're seeing increases in heat-related emergencies. We're seeing the same with drought. We're seeing the same with cold, right? Where we're seeing places that have cold that haven't had it before, and our fire EMS providers are taxed. And then the other one as part of climate, we mentioned already, is the interface. We're now no longer in a wildfire season in the United States. We're in a wildfire posture year round. And for those of you that follow the news, on any given week in the country, you'll see a wildland urban interface where there may be a neighborhood being evacuated. So that's the five. And those are all part of the summit. And then the sixth one that the fire service is working on with Congressional Fire Service Institute is how do we elevate the American Fire Rescue Service similar to where our brothers and sisters in law enforcement are as far as federal grant dollars. So the fire service does not receive a lot of federal grant money. AFG has done a great job. The U.S. Fire Administration obviously does what it can with the resources we have. But what the fire service has said is, we would like to have that same recognition of our needs, career volunteer combination, as law enforcement has. So how do we elevate the visibility on Capitol Hill through Congressional Fire Service Institute to say, yeah, we appreciate the AFG money. We love SAFER. The fire prevention and safety is valued, but there's not enough money in that pot to do what's being requested. So how do we elevate that and have more discussion? So those are the 6 current issues that are out there. The one thing I didn't mention, I'll just jump back for a sec. The other thing that I'm working on as part of the National Fire Academy is letting people know that the National Fire Academy is here for everyone in the fire and EMS service. So you don't have to be a firefighter. You don't have to be sworn or certified. We have people in communities now doing some pretty innovative things. We have people doing community risk reduction programs that have never been a firefighter, have no interest in being a firefighter, but love going out into schools and into our communities and teaching about, life preservers, let's say life jackets near waterways. It could be pool safety. It could be fire prevention. Youth fire setters, another area. We have people doing that have no interest in being firefighters. So what I tell people is that if you are doing that job and it meets the description of the student criteria, you belong at the National Fire Academy. So you don't have to wear a uniform. You don't have to be sworn or certified. If you're doing those things, we're glad to see you on campus.
Yeah, and that's what I always felt it was pretty amazing is that the myriad of not only instruction but also access to these things that make our communities better. And I'll just share this really quickly because I think it's very important. I had heard the term community risk reduction previous to going through the program, and that is now a line item in my budget. That's been changed because it's so important and to learn exactly the impact where typically we would look at fire prevention, inspection and prevention. It was those guys, the other guys, and we realized the importance of it. And I put up a meme recently. It's the iconic picture of the Titanic sinking by the bow, and there's a little conversation bubble coming off the back. Says, "Wow, I'm really glad the hole's not at our end of the ship." And that's how we look at the fire service sometimes, because either we're suppression, we're EMS, we're inspection and prevention, we're pub ed, and we get very tribal. And I'm very proud to be, a truckie or a special ops guy or whatever the case is. But the interconnection and how all these things really play off of each other, I never really had a true appreciation until I had the opportunity to sit there and listen to people. And then we had that open conversation, like you had mentioned, Eriks, that we got out of our little bubbles. We actually got out of our safe space to go into a safe space, if you will, where we could have a visceral conversation and go, wow, I've always felt this way, but I didn't want to be that guy at the kitchen table at the firehouse that said, I really like fire prevention, because, you were going to get drummed out. Not that anybody's against it. It's just, how many of your firefighters are going to jump for joy when you say, hey, we got a fire prevention detail today, and these are hard chargers on the engine or the truck, and they appreciate fire prevention, but that's not their wheelhouse. That's not their passion. So to be able to bring all those things together, and as you had mentioned before, I just kind of want to circle back to it a little bit. Again, I guess recognition of those whose shoulders we're standing on. Even when you go into the dining hall at NFA, there's the place setting for the fallen firefighter and the POW sitting in there. That's such a powerful thing. It's very subtle, but you can't help but notice it. So I think there's always a recognition of not only where we've come from, where we are, but also where we're going, which is hugely, hugely important. So with that being said, folks, we're about at the 1 hour mark. I just want to kind of go around the horn so we can wrap up. So with that, Bobby, do you have any final comments? Then we'll go to Eriks.
Hey, Eriks, thank you so much for coming on and having time to talk to us and things. And I certainly got to make my way back up to Fire Academy again. It's been a while, and go back up there and check it out. We probably should have reached out to Odd House and got this show sponsored by them, because if we get more people up there, they do better too, apparently. And but no, thank you very much for coming on and kind of give us insight into where we are and where we're going with the National Fire Academy. And I'd always push for more. I mean, the more things that you all can do, the better off we'll be, because you can defer some of the costs through the federal arm that other places can't. So the more you guys can do for classes and courses, the better it'll be for the fire service. And then from the fire service side of it, we have to support it. We got to send our people to these classes and things like that. So thank you very much for coming on. It's a pleasure meeting you. And all you other guys, stay safe out there. And so thanks, Trevor.
My pleasure. And Eriks, before I turn it over to you, we get some comments every now and then that come up. And Greg Temple from down there in Tennessee, he's actually a Delaware boy by the way of Maryland and by the way of Alaska and Texas and now Tennessee. But nevertheless, he had his comment. Mike Weller was one of my instructors for community risk reduction, did a great job, and completely changed my mindset on a lot of stuff. And Bobby, to your comment real quick, I will say this. Certainly we can reach out to the Odd House for sponsorship, but I also feel that over the years, I probably put most of our kids through college at least twice. So, we'll reach out to them on the next one. But with that being said, Eriks, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on and giving us the full spectrum of the NFA and that entire wonderful campus up there. So, Eriks, I want to give you the final word, the final pitch, and it's all you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to participate, and it's good to be here. And I think you could tell I have a passion for the organization and for the mission. And quite honestly, I'm not trying to sell you anything. We're not trying to sell you anything. We provide people with professional development opportunities, and it's pretty easy because as was mentioned, Mike Weller is one of our folks in community risk reduction. Mike is one of a number of staff that we have that truly have a passion for the fire service profession. And I don't mean profession, i.e. paid, but the folks that have both career volunteer opportunities to serve their communities. And we're here to give you more knowledge. So we want you to be safe. We want you to be healthy. We want you to be current. We want you to be relevant, but we also want you to be knowledgeable. So, take a look at our catalog. Just go online, National Fire Academy, and I actually put it underneath my photo. Just Google National Fire Academy admissions. You'll see classes available. Contact your state training directors if you want to know more about state weekends or bring in classes to your respective state. But it's fun to come to work every day, and it's fun to work with the American Fire Service, and it's pretty cool what we get to do. So thank you so much for letting me be part of it.
Absolutely. And Eriks, thank you again so much. We really appreciate you being on and very honored with that. And also, please get on the website. Like Eriks said, that they're not selling anything. They're not making money off of this. This is a service to us so that we can serve those that in our communities. And with that, you can get on the email distribution list. I get the list of classes that are coming up, and I always kind of get excited when I see that list of admissions classes. And even that, I failed to mention them before, but the admissions staff, the administrative staff there is phenomenal. I've had to reach out to them many times over the years, not because of any issues or problems, because of my ineptitude with technology and everything else. But you can make a phone call, and these folks will make sure that if you want to get into a class and you want to attend, they will bend over backwards. And they're just phenomenal people up there. Like I said, from the people who are the housekeepers, the housekeeping staff, the lodging staff, the food service staff, admissions, administrative, all the way around, and especially the instructional staff who, again, these are very, very well vetted people, and also folks that are very relevant in the industry. And again, I'm so glad I put a smile on my face when I saw Greg's comment about Mike Weller, because not only was he a great instructor and really gave me some insight on stuff. He is a fun guy to be in a classroom with. He's a very engaging and very entertaining individual. So with that being said, folks, thank you for tuning in.
And Trevor, let me interrupt you, because I'll give a shout out to two more Maryland folks who you mentioned admissions. Smiley White from Guardian Hose and Thermont, more than 50 years with the federal government. He's the admissions branch chief, and Joanne Boyd, who's from Vigilant Hose with their auxiliary. She's also a supervisor. Their mission is to get you into the NFA. So they will help you with your applications. Two Maryland folks that are passionate about the Maryland Fire Service, but obviously very passionate about the NFA. So they and their team will work night and day to get people onto campus, because that's how important it is.
No, absolutely, and they do. And even with the EFO program, I'll say this very quickly so we can wrap up. But I started in the program underneath one department. I transitioned to another department. We had the pandemic in between. So I was essentially on the decade program with a legacy. But nevertheless, I wouldn't trade that for the world, because there's just so many great people I was able to meet over the years. But the staff up there, anytime I had an issue or problem, because everything was constantly evolving, and they just rolled with it and said, and if they didn't have an answer, they said, I'm going to get you one. So, and it was always very responsive. So very, very, very much appreciated. Our traditions in the fire service, like most firefighters, we don't like the way things are, and we don't like change. So we're a very difficult group to have to deal with. So the staff up there, I think they understand that and let us have our, eccentricities, so to speak. And with that being said, they've been very good at, especially those of us who are trying to finish up the legacy program. I look at that like anything else in the fire service, that when I came in, the people who I came after, they looked at me and this is the dumbest guy I've ever seen in my life. And then the people came after me, they can never do as well as I'm going to, and that's just going to be a perpetuation. So as far as the new program, I'm very excited for the new EFO program. And you would explain that very well. Of course, we all have the pride of the legacy behind us, and of course, we're always going to say it's. We worked harder, better. We walked, uphill in the snow both ways, up the mountain. That's just our bragging rights. But I think that the vision and where the program's going, and just really quickly to say this, one of the things that was relayed to us is that the previous program needing to be retooled, part of which was that once people got through that program, a lot of them were retiring out within a year or two. So the benefit of that program literally walked out the door. So This is an opportunity to actually have some people who are going to have more tenure in the fire service and be able to not only take what they've learned personally and professionally, but also be able to take that and benefit not only their communities, but also do to pay that forward, if you will. So I think that's a great benefit of the new program. So I wish you the best of luck with that. And I'm very excited for the people who are in that program right now. We got to see some graduates during the symposium from some newly minted EFOs, which is great. But with that, folks, thank you for tuning in tonight. Eriks, again, thank you very much. Bobby, love you, brother. Good to see you again. And please check out the NFA, EMI, and NETC. It's a wonderful place. So with that, folks, cheers, be safe, and keep training.
Thanks, gang.